Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Gary May. This video we're doing another journey through time back to the year 1986, 34 years ago. We're going to be talking about some of my favorite albums from the year. Some are great albums. There'll be some honorable mentions at the end. I got some CDs, some cassettes, and vinyl. And basically honorable mentions are stuff I don't own. I'm just only showing what I own. 1986, actually, the year I was born. MTV is in full swing. Hair metal is, probably the biggest thing going. Well, heavy metal in general, thrash metal, death metal would get its start in '86. Kind of influences, although the band Death, which I feel like the first true death metal band, will come out in '87. Pop's all the rage. Michael Jackson's huge again. So yeah, the MTV crowd is kind of split between metal and pop. Hip hop is just kind of in its infant stages, but we're not going to get into all that. We're just going to stick with the albums I have here. And excuse me, I'm going to start with some cassettes first. This one I own on cassette. Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time. A lot of early Iron Maiden fans, big Iron Maiden fans, weren't that big of a fan of this album. Basically because there was a little different. It was more proggy. Some say they have some of them signature 80s, I don't know, electronic sounds in it. But overall, I think it's a decent album. I mean, it's definitely their weakest album to that point, but that's not saying much because this is a great album. It's followed up Power Slave and the huge tour from, which will be released on Live After Death. And yeah, I think it's a decent album. As you can see, the 80s graphics on there, Eddie is kind of like a cyborg. Next up, another one I own on cassette. This is Black Sabbath, 7 Star. As you can see, it says Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. At the time, this was supposed to be put out as a Tony Iommi solo album, but Ozzy left Black Sabbath, Dio left Black Sabbath. Them two were huge at the time, and the record label, convinced Tony to put it out under Black Sabbath, and he'll even do, featuring Tony Iommi since he's the only original member on the album, because it would sell more copies. And this actually features Glenn Hughes on vocals. Who Glenn Hughes is great, from Deep Purple. He has his own band, bass player and singer, and his vocals are great on this album. Another underrated album. I feel like obviously it's not as good as the stuff they did previous to this with Ozzy, Ian Gillan, and Ronnie James Dio, but it's amazing. Also features Eric Singer on drums, who goes on to play with Kiss. He's still the drummer Kiss to this day. Next up, we got the CDs. 1986. One of the biggest bands at the time just lost its lead singer. They split, hired a new lead singer named Sammy Hagar, released this album, 5150. Obviously, it's not as strong as his first 6 albums with David Lee Roth, but still a solid album. Maybe the best one they released with Sammy. Huge seller, put the band right back on top of the charts again. And it's a little more tamed down. Eddie's guitar playing, some more synth and pianos in this. As he started with Jump as a huge hit, but still a great album, full of hits. Why Can't This Be Love, Dreams, Summer Nights, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In. Features the title track 5150, which was it's code for Criminally Insane, and also name of Eddie Van Halen's recording studio. Next, debut by Poison. Yeah, a lot of people don't like Poison because they're hair metal. Still a good debut. Bret Michaels, Bobby Dahl, CC DeVille. Just a strong debut. Yeah, they look kind of ridiculous in the cover there. Yeah, I mean, all over MTV again. I Want Action was a big hit. I Don't Forget You. Look What the Cat Dragged In. The title track's a decent song. Talk Dirty to Me. Still, I like it. Next, Queen. A year after Live Aid, they released this album, and back on top again. One Vision, great song. They debuted at Live Aid. Kind of Magic, great hit off of here. Who Wants to Live Forever, another hit. Princess of the Universe, another big hit. Really bad album art, I think. But big album for Queen, big seller. And it was good to see Queen back on top again. It's been, you know, a couple years since they were. And Live Aid really brought them back. They were, at that time, they were kind of almost forgotten about. But that performance at Live Aid is one of the greatest live performances of all time. And that is the album that came out after Live Aid with the new energy they've had. Next, Ozzy Osbourne, The Ultimate Sin. Second album with Jake E. Lee after the Bark at the Moon and the passing of Randy Rhoads. Really, really cool artwork. This is like out of print now on CD. This is the 1995 remastered. It's got a different cover, but if you open it, you can have this and fold it out and make the cover. But huge song off here was Shot in the Dark. It was great. The Ultimate Sin's a great song. Secret Loser, Never Know Why. Lightning Strikes, Killer of Giants. I used to not like, but it kind of grew on me. But yeah, always a cool album from Ozzy. I always liked this one. Next up, Steve Winwood. You know, we know him from Traffic, Spencer Davis Group, Blind Faith. This was a big hit for him. Featured the title track, Back in the High Life, Higher Love, which was huge. Still a great song. Very 80s sounding, but definitely cool stuff. I always liked it. Higher Love's kind of like those guilty pleasure, like 80s dancey songs by the classic rock artists. But you know, a lot of those guys in the 60s and early 70s, they were putting stuff out in the 80s, and they just weren't, you know, hitting. They weren't selling a lot. They weren't selling a lot. They weren't didn't have a lot of hits on the radio, and they just, you know, I guess, you know, sign of the times. But Steve Winwood put probably out his biggest solo album, excuse me, of his career, Back in the High Life. Next up, Judas Priest, Turbo. They definitely changed their sound off of this. Another album that's not very well received by early Priest fans. Overall, I don't think it's a bad album. Obviously, it's not as good as his predecessor. Excuse me. And, you know, stuff that came before it, Scream for Revenge, Bridges to Steel, Defenders of the Faith. But, I mean, terrible album art. I think it's up there with, you know, Summer in Time, although I think Summer in Time is the better album. But it features the title track, which is a hit, Turbo Lover. Locked In's okay, Private Property. Rock You All Around's decent, Out in the Cold. The video for Turbo Lover was just ridiculous. But, it was still a big seller, and, you know, brought Judas Priest into the MTV era. Next up, huge album. It's really their big breakthrough, Slippery When Wet, Bon Jovi. I think everyone knows this album or owns this album. Huge seller. Let It Rock opens up, pretty cool track. You Give Love a Bad Name, Living on a Prayer, Want It Dead or Alive, Never Say Goodbye. Everybody knows them songs. What else can be said about this album? Just hit after hit. Huge album. Bon Jovi was like the biggest band at the time once they released this. Next, we got a compilation, which I like. It's pretty cool. This is Staring at the Sea, The Cure. The singles. Basically collects all their early stuff from the very late 70s up until the Head on the Door album. And yeah, the Head on the Door kind of put them in the, you know, the mainstream a little bit. And this collects stuff that you wouldn't know at the time. Goth rock, synth pop stuff. Really dark, cool stuff. Dark wave is the, I think, the genre they helped create. Boys Don't Cry, obviously, is on here. That was a big hit in the early 80s. But yeah, cool compilation. That would be their first of, well, they have 3 greatest hits, but that would be the first one, and then they released a second one that covers everything from Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me on throughout the 90s. Next up, last CD we got to show, R.E.M. Life's Rich Pageant. Huge album, huge indie album at the time. Very influential. A couple cool tracks on here, Begin to Begin, These Days, Fall on Me, Swan Swan Hummingbird. I think this is the album that really people start looking at R.E.M. and they would follow this up with Document, which, you know, wound up would go in huge with the MTV hit It's the End of the World as We Know It. Alright, now we're going to get into vinyl. The Depeche Mode, Black Celebration. This is the album that basically established Depeche Mode's signature sound. Before this, they were kind of new wave, poppy, synth pop. This is dark wave. This is depressing, very gothic, very cool sounding. The title track is just amazing. Question of Lust is also A Question of Time, and Stripped. I don't know if they were hits at the time, but they're very well-known songs. And not my favorite Depeche Mode album, because Violator has that, but definitely my second favorite Depeche Mode album. Such cool stuff. Next up, we got another debut by a very underrated band, Cinderella with Night Songs. Cinderella from my hometown of Philadelphia. They kind of got thrown in with like Poison and all these other bands as hair metal, but they were so much more. They were bluesy, they were rocking, they had a kind of cross between AC/DC and Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones. And basically, they didn't dress like this prior to this album. The record label wanted this, and obviously they sold. They were played on MTV. They had hit songs, but the music is so much better than the image. And they would get bluesier as time would go on with, their next 3 albums. But really cool album. Night Songs, the title track's amazing. Shake Me's great. Nobody's Fool, one of their biggest ballads. Nothing for Nothing. This whole album is great. Somebody Save Me's awesome. Push Push, Back Home Again. So don't let this cover, distract you from the music. Just grab it, listen to it. It's really good stuff. Like I said, it's very bluesy. It's got some AC/DC vibes, very early Aerosmith vibes, huge Rolling Stones influence, but it's not hair metal. Next up for another compilation. This is cool. This one's just titled Misfits. I don't ever say greatest hits because it's not, but there's some unreleased, well at the time unreleased songs to this. Misfit stuff that was just found on 45s, to collect stuff from their 2 albums prior to this, their 2 studio albums. But yeah, it's just cool. Cool cover. It's got the skulls on it. She, Hollywood Babylon, Bullet, Horror Business, Teenage Mars, Night of the Living Dead, Where Eagles Dare, Vampire, Turned Into a Martian. Skulls, I love that song. Die, Die, My Darling, which was later covered by Metallica. And yeah, this was a huge influence on punk and metal alike, especially thrash metal. Definitely, probably their best collection, their best compilation there. Next up, copy's kind of beat up. This is Graceland by Paul Simon. Paul Simon didn't really have many hits since the mid-70s. Obviously, he was huge with Simon and Garfunkel in the late 60s and early 70s. But he went to Africa. I believe it was, I don't want to say South Africa. Yeah, South Africa. And he adapted the music of South Africa. Has a lot of South African musicians on here. And you definitely hear it. It's definitely different, but it's cool stuff. Graceland, the title track, is a good song. Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes is definitely one of the hits. And the biggest hit, You Can Call Me Al. Another huge video that was on MTV. Had Chevy Chase in it. Has like a kind of a corny dance, but it's just like a really good feel-good song. Alright, next up, the Stones, Rolling Stones. Dirty Work. As you can see, their outfits look ridiculous. This is another album that gets a lot of shit. Mick and Keith were fighting a lot during this recording process. But I think it's a good album. I like it a lot. Cover of Harlem Shuffle. Too Rude is like a cool like reggae tinged song. Definitely awesome with Keith singing. One Hit to the Body, one of my favorite Stone songs. Definitely the 80s. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a great album. And after this, they would, there was infighting at Live Aid. Mick Jagger did a set. He sang with Tina Turner, Keith Richards, and Ron Wood. They joined Bob Dylan for their set. But yeah, cool stuff. After this, Keith would do his little solo career. Mick would do his solo career. And they would reconnect in '89 to do Steel Wheels, which is an amazing album. All right, we're getting down to the final 3. Obviously, the most important albums of '86. And if you know your music, if you know your years, if you know your metal, I think you already know these 3 albums. Megadeath. Their sophomore album, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? One of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time. Got them on MTV with the video for the self-titled track. It is cool stuff. Dave Mustaine, Chris Poland, Gar Samuelson, and Dave Ellefson who still plays in the band. Unfortunately, Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson, I believe they both passed away. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, sadly, they both passed away. Just amazing album. Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, The Peace Sells, Devil's Island. That's just the first side. Fast thrash metal. Good Morning Black Friday, one of my favorites on here. And the cover of I Ain't Superstitious, you know, an old blues song, but they do it in a thrash metal way. Just such cool album artwork. I guess it's kind of like a United Nations building in the back there. You know, with Vic Rattlehead holding the For Sale sign. Awesome. Another amazing 5-star awesome album. Clocking in about a half hour. Slayer, Rain and Blood. Probably the fastest thrash album ever made. You put this album on, it's kind of hard to turn off without listening to the entire thing. It's just it's amazing. It's kind of hard to believe that 4 guys could actually make this stuff. Dave Lombardo is just amazing on it. Obviously, Hanneman and King are great on guitar. Opens up with Angel of Death, Piece by Piece, Necrophobiac, Altar of Sacrifice, and the Jesus Saves. Side 2, Criminally Insane, Reborn, Epidemic, Postmortem, and obviously Raining Blood, which is such a huge song. Cool picture of the guys there, and just really evil, satanic artwork. Just really cool. You can kind of just stare at it and pick out different things. Yeah, this might be the greatest thrash album of all time. Although, we have another one. The grand finale of 86. Obviously the greatest album to come out of 86. Well, I don't know. Rain and Blood's pretty great. Master of Puppets, Metallica. You know, what can I say that has been said about this album? Battery, Master of Puppets, The Thing That Should Not Be. Welcome Home, Sanitarium, Disposable Heroes, Leper Messiah, The Instrumental Orion, and ends with Damage Incorporated. Last album to feature Cliff Burton, who would sadly pass away on tour when their tour bus hit a patch of ice, and unfortunately Cliff Burton was trapped underneath and passed away. But yeah, this is known as like one of the greatest metal albums of all time, if not the greatest metal album. One of the greatest thrash metal albums of all time, if not the greatest thrash album. And this is the album that was like, wow, Metallica is a force to be reckoned with. And of course, they would follow it up in 1988 with Injustice for All and hit MTV with the one video. But yeah, that's, in my opinion, the greatest albums of 86. And I mean, just these 3 here, these thrash masterpieces, make 86 a great year. Alright, for the honorable mentions, stuff I don't own. For some reason, I know I had them before, or I can't find them. AC/DC, Who Made Who, was the soundtrack for Maximum Overdrive. Only featured 2 new tracks at the time, Who Made Who, and there's an instrumental, I think it was called DT. But it collects stuff. There's Ride On from the Bon Scott era. For Those Who About to Rock is on there. You Shook Me All Night Long. Sink to Pink. Shake Your Foundations. Just an awesome album. And, you know, unfortunately I don't have it right now to show. But another album I have and I didn't pull out, Peter Gabriel. So, great album that was released in 86. Gabriel's big breakthrough solo album. Peter Gabriel was, you know, always in dressing up and had his face paint. This big prog rock guy from Genesis. He took the makeup off, just came out there as himself. Yeah, hit it big time, no pun intended. Red Rain, Sledgehammer was a huge MTV video. I believe that won awards for Video of the Year or something. And of course, In Your Eyes, which will go on the feature in the John Cusack video, Say Anything. But yeah, that's basically 86 in a nutshell. There's obviously a lot more stuff that came out that year that I'm not thinking of right now for my honorable mention. I'm not showing. But like I said, I do have Peter Gabriel's though, and I just don't have it. I forgot to grab it. You know, yeah, I forgot to grab it to show it. And yeah, just really cool stuff that came out that year. Creator, Pleasure to Kill came out in 86. A couple of, sorry about that, my cats get a little crazy. Yeah, but like I said, that's the year 1986. Any other albums that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, drop in the comments. And again, thanks for watching. Subscribe. And sorry, cats are fighting, attacking the phone. Gary Elysium's at Instagram, sorry. And yeah, so 1986, and I'll be back with another year. And thanks for watching. Stay safe.